Hello and welcome to the video interview session of ET Auto. This is Shruti Mishra, and today I will be interviewing Mr. Prashanth Doreswamy, Country Head at Continental India and Managing Director at Continental Automotive India. Mr. Doreswamy brings over 2 decades of experience to his role across automotive and manufacturing. In today's session with ET Auto, he will share his insights on how the company Continental is managing the COVID crisis. What are the steps being taken by the company in the direction of innovations and technologies? Hello, Mr. Doreswamy. A warm welcome to the show.
Good morning, Shruti. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and pleasure to be here.
So let me begin by asking you that how this COVID crisis is affecting your business and future readiness.
Okay, so I think the unprecedented lockdown in India has brought many challenges related to operations in the automotive industry. And after the government relaxed the lockdown regulations, especially for the manufacturing sector, we have been gradually resuming our operations with about 50% of our workforce across all our manufacturing facilities, and partly, I would say, aided by automation process that we had already in place. Our Industry 4.0 standard, equipped with various smart factory features, also has supported to a great extent in resumption of work seamlessly, I would say. Apart from resuming the production, our highest priority always been to secure the safety of employees, supply chain, and also meet the customer requirements. On the work from home, I come from a manufacturing background, so in my entire career of 28 years, I haven't spent so much time confined to one place. For an industry like ours, running production lines remotely is not at all possible. But you can still do that, what's called the next best thing, ensuring as much normalcy as possible with regard to customer commitments without putting our people at risk. If I go back as early as Jan, we started setting up virtual war room meetings because we had a huge supply chain dependency with the China as well. So we had to set up this virtual war room meetings, tracking the project status, supply chain. That also helped us to continue with the virtual war room for tracking the day-to-day operations as well, including some of the new projects, including employee status. And this worked very well like a clock, I would say, and an 100% switch to virtual lifestyle is not possible for a manufacturing-centric technology. But with the government directives, we will assess the situation to increase the workforce going forward. I think at this point of time, if you ask me, the most important thing is the power of transparent communication, especially during tough times, not just with employees, but with the complete stakeholders. So it takes a great deal of consciousness from the leaders in the midst of this crisis, not being too negative, now overly optimistic, and balancing this communication. So right from the start of the crisis, safety of our people was our highest priority. So the entire organization stood together as a team in handling the situation with a commendable sense of ownership. I take this opportunity to thank all my team members.
All right. So post the relaxation, what kind of supply chain constraints are you facing right now?
Okay, so we started tracking, as I told you, way back in Jan of 2020 in terms of sustaining the supply chain. We had all the processes in place, what we call as we always keep updating to ensure that there's a sustainability in this complete supply chain. So, and that has helped to a great extent in terms of keeping our customer commitments as per their planned requirements. So if I have to say, for example, we have some set of parts which are already localized, for which we had a complete tracker established for each of our supply base because they are spread across different states. Unfortunately, different states have the different lockdown periods and the different rulings from the state government. So we had to keep abreast of all those things. At the same time, we had huge supply chain dependency on China and other parts of the world as well. While the entire world was brought down, certainly some of the technology which we have implemented helps us to see virtually the material in the value chain and accordingly plan our resources.
All right. So at a time when everyone across the automotive supply chain is focusing majorly on conserving cash. So, have you made any major changes in your investments plan for the Indian market and towards the new technology? Has there been any massive or drastic change that Continental is planning to bring in?
Okay, so if I have to say, if you have to start with what you call the new technology, we always believed in what you call for the market, in the market. So, and you may be aware, we have been investing here in India in terms of bringing a lot of new technologies, and also the most importantly, so making it affordable. From the continental perspective, we have a lot of technologies elsewhere being used, currently already launched. But when it comes to India, India is a value-driven market. So when it comes to that, unless you are competitive in the entire value chain and have market-specific products, it will be very difficult to compete. So from that perspective, we have been investing in terms of localizations. For example, if I have to talk about 2019, we had two huge investments in terms of localizing the further extension of airbag control units, and the second one was in terms of expanding our base of the wheel speed sensors. So we continue to do so, and also we have two new greenfield plants coming up in Pune. Unfortunately, due to this COVID situation, we are not in a position to inaugurate, but for a localization, especially on the Contintech side for surface solutions, which is an alternative for the leather, which are used in automotive, either for seating application or for the door trims or for the even the dashboard equipments, and also the alternate for plastic. So these are some of the products which we are localizing it here in India with a new plant. So that continues. Our focus on India continues to that. So from that perspective, I don't see that we have put an hold on the investment, but certainly given the current situation, we are scrutinizing it a little bit more deeply and accordingly taking conscious decisions.
So, as you mentioned, that localization is going to be your prime focus going forward, and it always been a very critical part of continental India. So,
yeah.
Considering the post-COVID world, what kind of major changes in your strategies are you making to achieve that level of localization, or I would say a substantial level of like Make in India or managing the domestic supplier chain? How are you planning to do that?
So Continental, is a leading technology company providing solutions for mobility. So we've been working continuously on our automotive and the rubber technologies. So under automotive, we have achieved, I would say, great success in terms of two big divisions, which is autonomous mobility and safety, and the vehicle networking and information, these two business areas. When I talk about autonomous mobility and safety business areas, which develops, produces, and also integrates the active and passive safety technologies and controls the vehicle dynamics. Some of the products are like the electronic stability control or the ABS or the active or passive safety systems, and also the vehicle dynamics and also the autonomous mobility. So these are some of the product lines which is under this business here. The focus lie on a very high level of system expertise, and also the interconnectivity of the products and system functions are created along what we call as a sense, plan, and act chain of effects. So if anything has to be acted first, vehicle has to sense. So having sensed, it has to plan what should be done, and having planned, then it has to act, for example. Okay. So this makes driving safer and easier and pave the way for autonomous mobility. So these are some of the technologies certainly we have been working on. The other is on the vehicle networking and information business areas, which is developing to some extent next generation solutions and also services for networking vehicles with drivers and also passengers. Other vehicles, the infrastructure and the cloud. Like when I talk about infrastructure, it's vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity or vehicle-to infrastructure connectivity, and also to the cloud. So across various business units, HMI, if I have to talk about, is one such thing which is undergoing a huge change with the customer experience becoming the highlight of any new car which is sold today. So these are some of the technologies certainly we have been working on and for our future growth.
So if you have to prioritize like between BS6 technologies, autonomous and electrical and connected, so how
Okay.
you are gonna prioritize your strategies in the post-COVID area? Like if you have to rank it up in the pecking order, which technologies amongst these are going to be your first priority or first focus area?
I think it will be very difficult to put a priority to that because if you see what is shaping the future of mobility, it's connected, autonomous, and the safe mobility. So we are present in all three, and shift is happening across all the three areas. So our focus, I would say, it's on across all the three areas without being specific to any of this thing. So when you talk about Euro 4, Euro 6 in India, the pandemic certainly had a significant impact of the transition. Unfortunately, this happened at the midst of the transition when this was supposed to happen on 1st of April. One aspect of BS4 inventory, that's certainly a little bit of worrisome for the industry. I think now, over a period of time, we are slowly overcoming this. The other aspect is definitely the disrupted supply chain. Because of this, there some disruptions happen in terms of ramping up some of the BS4 technology. Because with BS6, we had a lot of electronic dependency and there were a lot of imports. So, yeah. If I have to speak about the regulation which are driving some of the things, the transition is very much on track. Today, I would say legally there are no BS4 cars produced or sold here in India. However, for the complete transition, we need certainly the boosted buying sentiment to replace what we call the BS4 older technology and road with BS6. Given the current situation, this might take slightly longer than what industry had certainly anticipated. I think if you ask me, our industry has certainly suffered a little bit of cardiac arrest. I would say the stimulus that we would have welcomed would have been possible, but with some robust purchase incentives for vehicles equipped with modern combustion technologies, this opportunity has been missed, I would say. I think in the short term, I don't think we can expect this concession from the government. At the same time, I can't agree with those who support incentives solely for electric vehicles. Yeah, large number of vehicles equipped with the state-of-the-art combustion technologies like BS6 are ready and waiting at manufacturers and the dealerships to be sold. So they are clean vehicles that meet the world's most stringent emission norms and are cleaner than some of the electric vehicles, I would say, charged with coal-based electricity. So every vehicle that replaces an old one contributes towards the climate and the environmental protection. I think in India, today, if you see with Euro 6, we have the cleanest diesel technology. So both diesel and gasoline vehicles contribute towards certainly, from my perspective, contribute to the positive climate, less impactful. Yeah. So that's on the safety side. If I talk about digitalization, maybe in India it could take some time. So what we are doing as a strategy is through digitalization, we are making a vehicle part of the internet. Yeah. So with telematics, electronics for the chassis and the antennas. So these are among our major strengths. And we are now adding further strengths. We are developing new architectures for the electronics in the car, and we are also paving the way for a standardized operating system. You know, today how the mobile phone operates. So you have only 4 or 5 operating systems, but you have hundreds of thousands of different mobiles. So similarly, we are paving way for sort of an industry standardized operating systems. So you all know such systems from our cell phones, as I just told you. So as a user, you are used to download the new programs at a click of a button. So, and this is what we are expecting, which we would like to do sitting inside the car. When it comes to car, then safety becomes much more critical. So from that perspective, also we are ahead of times in terms of protecting against cyber attacks, which cars just like cell phones needs as well. So we have a presence there. We have a technology through an acquisition of a company called Argus. And here too, I would say Continental playing a leading role in the digitalization.
So, sir, can you specify like one or two your digitalization plans for the Indian market, particularly? Like, what are those, and when you are planning to bring those to the Indian market, like in full-fledged way?
Okay. So I told you that for us, bringing technology into India, honestly, is not a big challenge. But the challenge comes in bringing the technology and making it, selling it at an affordable cost. Yeah. Because there are already so many advanced technologies which are available in the other parts of the world, which Continental has already developed and it's in process. But India has always been a little bit of, I would say, follower. Yeah. So, and also it's a value-driven market. So, how do you ensure that these products with the latest technologies are bought at a value which customers are ready to pay? So, that's one challenge we continue to have. Having said this, some of the technologies certainly we are working see, we started investing in ABS way back in 2016, though the regulation came into effect in 2018. So similarly, we expect by 2023, there's a new regulation which is coming in, which is the enhancement of what we call as electronic stability control. So which is much superior to the ABS technologies. So we already have invested in those technologies. We do make the ESCs for some of the vehicles which are being produced here in India to be sold outside as a completely built units. So we have the technology as well as the infrastructure with the investments in terms of the localization so already in place. So that's one certainly we are looking forward for bringing in more and more ESC technology into India. Second is when you talk about autonomous, autonomous is a little big technology. So if I have to divide that autonomous driving into something called assisted, automated, and autonomous. Okay, and autonomous is L5, but we are at L0. So with that assisted technologies, can we bring some L1 features, L0, L1 features? What are those? So those are emergency brake assist, could be 360-degree surround view. And also last year, that was a new innovation which was showcased in C. C is what we call as a see-through bonnet. Sitting inside the car, through your screen, you can see below the chassis, the roadway. And that will be, I think it will be much more useful for, given the road conditions, what we have in India and also the narrow roads to make it, to make your driving much more safer. So these are some of the technologies we are looking at, certainly. So
Now, talking about the auto component industry, many of the auto component companies are currently facing difficulties in sourcing components because they are dependent on China and other countries. So,
absolutely.
what is the position of Continental in this regard?
So when it comes to Continental, Continental is a global company and our presence is spread across 65 countries and we have more than 550 plants, and rightly so in China also. And we do respect China. China is a big market for Continental. So when it comes to supply chain situation, I think we are not very unique in terms of the challenges what the industry is facing, because there's a lot of dependency on the electronic parts on across the entire supply base, not only in automotive, even in the other industries as well. It could be consumer durable or the industrial products having electronics. So I think that's one challenge certainly as an industry we are facing with this. But I think industry has evolved over a period of time and resilient also to these changes, I think. So industry is slowly coping up with all these challenges, and it is not going to be so easy to de-risk this overnight. Yeah, there are certain things, yes, which can be done, but there are certain things when I talk about the active and passive components, it's not going to be easier because this involves huge multi-million billion dollar investments, and it's a very volume driven businesses, and already there are established players in China, and maybe for some time we have to depend and try and see what is that we can do in the value chain to de-risk and ensure that the supply chain is always protect it by other means.
And lastly, within your product portfolio, which products do you think that will gain prominence when the whole industry, the whole automobile industry will attain its new normal? So, what are the products do you think that in the upcoming time, particularly in the post-COVID world, will gain prominence within the automotive framework?
I think over the past few years, the trend has always been towards the clean, connected, and the safe mobility. And even before COVID-19 hit us, right? Yeah. So many countries are already on their way of testing autonomous vehicles. So it is quite feasible that COVID-19, which gave rise to several questions about human contact, continuity of operations, etc., could create further interest in pulling ahead some of the plans when it comes to autonomous mobility, because driverless vehicles can play a huge role in ensuring the transportation availability in such situations in the future. Shared mobility might take a backseat for the time being as people are more concerned about sanitization and also sources of infection. So there are also questions about how this will impact the public transport. With norms like social distancing coming in the picture, I think India specific, I think two-wheelers might gain popularity over other modes like the shared mobility. And already we are seeing that. And the bounce back, what we see in the two-wheeler is really encouraging actually. The another factor in consideration would be willing people, how willing they are to invest in vehicles. With the advent of BS6, the cost of most vehicles have risen marginally because the total cost of ownership has gone up. So there was also an increase a little while ago with the introduction of ABS technologies when they introduced in 2018, 2019. So while these are necessary additions to a vehicle, this consumer would focus purely on the cost factor. So this could for auto parts suppliers to develop technologies that are not only safe but also cost effective, which I already mentioned it. So I think that's going to be the challenge for each of the suppliers. How do we make, while you bring in all these technologies, how do we make it cost effective?
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with ET Auto.
Thank you. Thank you.